Coach Matt here. This is the Coach's Handbook.
This the best time. Why you wanna be an outcast? Numbers don't lie. You gain a lot from this math class. It takes time to be great. You can learn the lesson. Blood, sweat, and tears. Heartbeat of a champion. Big or small, your heart is the biggest weapon. So follow before you lead and water and plant your seeds. When it's all said and done, you be the best they ever seen. So listen to my catalog on this coach's blog.
Hey, everybody. Our guest this week tested the waters in sports, playing a variety of them in high school as well as some adult leagues, and has been coaching multiple sports at various levels for many years, ranging from basketball to soccer and much more. With 3 kiddos in multiple sports, he keeps extremely busy. Welcome, Al Berkeypile. Al, how are you?
Doing well. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me.
So Al, I kind of am cheating with him because he's also my co-coach. So you may see me do a few inside jokes here or there that you will have no clue about, but I'll get it. So that's all I care about. So Coach Al, I want to start off. We're gonna kind of just chat a little bit, and what I want to do is most of the sports you played in high school. I want to start a little bit before that. You primarily didn't do many sports before middle school, high school. It was mostly just playing in backyards, playing in the dirt, like playground area and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely. The only organized sports I played just for a couple of years, I played baseball in 5th and 6th grade, just for a local community community team. And then flag football for 1 year. And that was pretty much it. Other than that, it was every day in the summer finding something to do, usually baseball with a couple of other friends in the area. Or we'd go to our friend's house if he was home and play some basketball in the mud. It was just grass yard where there was no grass, where we would play with a plywood backboard and a rim. So, but we made do with what we could do. So it was fun. We found something to do every day.
So I guess, I know you and I know how big you are into sports, but what was the love there at that point? Was there a drive at that point, or did it really come till later?
It was just fun. This is what we did. We would play one-on-one baseball. Imagine how hard that is. But we did. Because it was like that's what we wanted to play. Or we'd grab a soccer ball, and I never really played much soccer, but I had a soccer ball, and I'd use the well pump and a tree as the goal, on one side, and then we'd set up a shirt and a hat on the other side as a goal, and just see if we could, kick it by each other. So we just did whatever we could do to find time, and that's all we wanted to do besides building forts, maybe.
I remember those days, the fourth days. Your friends, were they in the similar situation, or did you see them playing sports as well and you just weren't able to?
Great question. Some it was the same as me, where we just didn't have those types of opportunities, but I did know other friends in my neighborhood that did. I remember putting on my buddy's football equipment for the first time when I was, I had to have been 6th or 7th grade, and just like dreaming about, man, this would be awesome to play football. So he had extra pads one day, and so I put him on. I think it was his brother's pads, that his brother wasn't home. So I put his pads on, and he put his on, and we went out in the yard, and he annihilated me a few times. And that's, that was kind of the extent of me putting on pads until I got to high school. But yeah, it was, I was willing to do and try anything back then, just because I had fun with it.
Well, and I know, and we're going to get to this in a minute, because I was blown away at all the sports you actually did in such a short amount of time. But before we get to high school, let's go into middle school. Your first real organized sport. What was it, and what did you think of it?
Baseball, I was in 6th grade. We got into co-facs, and it was a little bit more serious than majors, but still, youth baseball. And my experience was good. The coaches were nice, and I wasn't very good. And our team struggled quite a bit. I don't even think we got a win that year. Um, but, it was kind of my first flavor of, it was kind of that next level. It wasn't, third and fourth grade, so people were getting a little bit more serious about it. So I was pretty good in the field, but hitting wasn't really a strong suit for me. So if I would go up there really hoping for a walk. That was kind of what I would hope for. But
Please hit me with the ball. Please hit me with the ball.
right. That's right. I had more success in flag football, I guess, in sixth grade. So that was a little bit more fun.
All right. So, but now the taste is really coming on, and you're really dreaming about it. You're preparing for high school. You knew it was coming. First, before we get into any of that, let's do a quick rundown of all of the sports you played in high school.
In high school, so I started football, um, and then after my sophomore year, I stopped playing football in the fall and started running cross country. And then in the winter, played basketball my freshman year, got cut my sophomore year from the JV team. So I decided to try wrestling, which I've never wrestled before in my life. Really had no interest in wrestling, although I've been asked by a couple of friends to do it. But decided I would go with that because there was nothing else that I could do in terms of organized sports. So I did wrestling through my senior year, and then in the spring I did track all 4 years.
Okay. What events did you do in track? Do you remember?
Middle distance mainly. I do the 2 mile. I did the 2 mile a couple of times, but middle distance, half mile and mile were more my strong suits.
And you were blown away the competition, I'm sure.
No, not
No.
at all. No, I was right. I was in that second wave.
You have a runner's like build, so
Yes.
I and we'll even get into more about that later.
I fool a lot of people with that.
Me too. I have the same problem. So football, that was your want at that point when you first got into high school.
Yes, absolutely. So I went to a smaller private school, um, second grade through eighth grade. And really the only sport that they had by the time I got into that middle school age was basketball for the school. So it wasn't really organized. I mean, I was sixth, seventh, eighth grade playing on the varsity team, just because of numbers and they needed it. And I could put the ball through the hoop, I guess. Um, so um, so when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go to that private school anymore due to some transportation changes that they made, I ended up going to the public school system, which I was sad, of course, because I was leaving some of my friends and friends that I've known since I was really small, to go to a public school. But a larger part of me was really excited because the opportunity it was a little bit realized that I was actually going to be able to play, more organized sports at a high school level, which really excited me. And part of that was football. I really wanted to play football. Um, it concerned my dad at the time, and really he told me no to start, and I didn't really understand why, nor did he give me a reason why. Um, but as I grew older, I kind of realized it was probably more because I was, 5'5" and 95 pounds soaking wet, literally. I was very, very small and skinny, throwing pads on that weighed 50% of my body weight, probably would scare any parent, into not wanting them to play. But he eventually relented, and let me give it a go. So it was, no regrets in terms of that.
Well, you actually segued into my next question very well. I loved your way of describing you in high school, because almost everybody has seen the movie Rudy, and to call and for those of you listening and looking, what you don't understand is I'm 5'10" with shoes on, and Al is taller than me. So for me to visualize him as tiny, I would never have thought of that. His kids are almost my height, and his son is my height, and he's 13.
Yes.
Yeah, so yeah,
Literally 5'10".
yeah, exactly. And so for how did being that size, you finally convinced your dad you're in it, you're on the field. How did you persevere being half the size of everybody? I mean, on the football field, and I know football. I've grown up around it, and I've seen a lot of, you have to have size. I mean, even the small ones are my height. So how did that
Yeah.
go?
It was hard. I mean, so on top of this, I'm starting football the day that school, like first day of school, which these guys have been going since middle of August, and I've never even met 98% of these guys. So I'm completely brand new to the school, and just have a couple of friends that I played baseball with that were on the team. So, I was really scared, legitimately scared, nervous, and so
They're
I
all
run
bigger
out
than
there.
you.
Oh yeah, I run out there. They all got their pads on because they've all done their conditioning. I've got my helmet on, no pads because I got to go through my 3 days of conditioning. So I get up, I get in line. They're already out there warming up. I'm just standing there and I have no idea what they're doing, and they're just doing this little wrist and ankle rolls. And I was not that perceptive to notice that they were doing anything. And first thing somebody says to me, say, "Hey, idiot, wake up." And grab your wrist and start rotating. I was like, oh, this is a great start. But, but at the end of the day, it was really more, the one day that my neighbor put those pads on me and hit me several times and just flattened me. I'll never forget what he had told me at that time. He said, no matter how much it hurts, you get up every time. And that's the mentality I had when I went out there. It's like, I know that these guys are going to just wreck me, but I've got to get up every single time, because why am I going to be out here if I'm not going to be willing to get up every single time? So, I was at least not naive enough to think that people weren't going to come after me just because of how small I was. And they did, but that's okay. Rudy was a good analogy because, I wasn't going to be the starter, but I needed to give the team as best of a look as I possibly could, to feel part of the team and just contribute to the team. And hopefully I'd get my shot at the field and play in a few games and make some meaningful minutes out of it. And that was really my goal, is, get through the season, play some meaningful minutes, see if I could get a few tackles under my belt, maybe I get a couple of receptions, whatnot. And help the team, do what we can do and succeed.
I think that's a great thing to tell kids these days, especially because you have these athletes that come out and they're naturally strong and naturally fast, and they tend to get all of the minutes, right? And then whine if they get taken out for a play. And yet all these bench players, I mean, let's face it, they're bench players, right? And they work so hard. You mean, and even get to college, and there's a whole team that's just for practice, and that's what they do. And so I think that's great. Just keep pushing. And now, what do you think gave you that drive to push? I mean, you took a beating.
I just wanted to be out there. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's a great question, but I wanted to play, and I wanted to get, in a game and under those lights, and have a crack at, knocking somebody else from another team on their can. And I did. Actually, the very first play, of my 9th grade year was on kickoff return, and I was in the second line from the back, and the ball was kicked behind me. And the gunner from the outside was coming in, and I just lowered my shoulder and sprung into him as hard as I could. And I just caught him off balance and knocked him on his can. What felt great about it was that it was right in front of a bunch of the varsity guys who were sitting in the stands. And I walked out the field and they were all yelling and screaming because they saw me. I was right in front of them. So I celebrated with a little fist pump, and the coach caught me and yelled at me for it. But but it felt good. Like it felt really good to do that. But for what drove me, I don't know, man. I just wanted to be out there, and that was my focus.
That I totally understand that. I felt that way. I did it. I played soccer throughout high school, and it's something different when you step on that field in front of, you know, however many people, a couple hundred people sometimes, and it's just, yeah, let's go. So football was just a little bit. You also did a little bit of basketball, was cut, which kind of pushed you to wrestling. I want to kind of get into wrestling, just because basketball we can talk about in a little bit. But so you said you never heard of it before. You ended up playing it through senior year. What was the hardest part for you with starting wrestling, not understanding wrestling, and really just getting into it?
So, with basketball, I'd say that was hard for me, because basketball is probably one of my number one passion sports. I loved, and I still love playing basketball. I still play basketball, through old man church league type stuff. But, so my freshman year, I thought I did pretty well. I was definitely not a sizable kid, and I was certainly not a physical specimen, compared to some of the other basketball athletes that we had. So, but when I got cut, that was pretty devastating. And I had a couple friends that came up to me and said, you just come out and try wrestling, because they had asked me before, and I said, no, I'm a basketball player. I'm just going to go to the JV practices and practice, see if I can get better. The coach was willing to let me practice with the team, and maybe I'll make, the varsity team my junior year. Maybe I'll grow a couple inches, put on some weight. And, and then I went to one practice, and then I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't, it just didn't feel right. And I said, maybe I should try something different. So I did. I went to the coach and said, this is what's going on. And, would you have me, even though I've never stepped foot on a wrestling mat before. He didn't even hesitate and said, we'd love to have you. Practice is tomorrow, right after school. And that's where I went. And I never looked back. Wrestling is such a great sport. And I struggled my sophomore year, my very first year. A lot of kids at that level have already been wrestling since they were, 6, 7, 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So my very first match, I had to wrestle against a state qualifier from the year before, pinned me in 19 seconds. So it didn't take long. But
sounds like he was toying with you a little bit.
Yeah, he may have. I was certainly a fish out there when I first started, that's for sure. But it was a great challenge, and it's a very physical sport, and a mental sport as well. I mean, there's so much to it in terms of quick thinking, positioning, endurance. It's a sport that I would never have thought I would enjoy it as much as I did, but I'm so glad that I did it.
Now, was it wrestling that the team won a pretty big deal, right?
We did. So my junior year, we had a really solid team, and the neighbor that threw those football pads on me, he was a senior that year, and a very good wrestler in his own right. He was one of the ones that had been wrestling since he was a little kid. So he really helped me through, teaching me some different things, strategy, different stances, things of that nature. But he was a senior along with a group of other guys that had kind of grown up wrestling together, and we had some really good success, not only from an individual perspective, like some of those guys, but from a team perspective, and everything just kind of worked out real well for us. We won the conference that year, then we won districts, and then we saw who we drew in regionals, and we thought that we have a shot here. So we ended up winning regionals pretty handily in winning the championship, and then going off to the state meet. And that was what an experience that was, going to Battle Creek for the state meet. And
Ooh, Battle Creek.
yeah, that's right. That's right. It wasn't too far, but we got to stay the night in a hotel, which was really cool. It was my first kind of overnight bonding experience with a team. The back in the day, that was when, GoldenEye 007 was big and you could have
Oh,
multiple
yeah.
remotes. That was huge. That was huge. So somebody brought, one of the systems to do that. So we were up for a few hours doing that.
That's
So that was
awesome.
great camaraderie. And we went into the state meet and, we got to do the pomp and circumstance and we were marching around the mats and they had each mat set up for each division. And we drew a pretty good side of the bracket. We were pretty excited with the side that we drew because we knew, Dundee was like, they're like they're the mecca of wrestling at that division. And they still are. And they were on the opposite side of the bracket from us. And we knew we just had to get by this first team in the quarterfinals. And if we did, we had a pretty good shot to get to the championship. And we ended up losing that match by 1 point.
Ooh.
It just didn't quite go our way on one of the matches that we needed to go our way. But so it was disappointing, but what a great experience that was, to feel that championship and that state meet feel. Just such a great feeling that I would never forget.
So I can't go on to your coaching side without asking you a coach's question before we get to you as a coach. And I've asked the others this as well. But again, you started later in your youth. So was there one coach that stood out to you that really guided you, helped you, you learned from? Doesn't have to be your coaching style, but that really stands out in your as a someone that you looked up to.
Boy, I had a couple of them. One of my wrestling coaches, Mr. Bunker, he was, big, strong, gruff guy. And you could definitely, he didn't say a lot, but you heard him when he did. Not from a yelling perspective, but he just had that recognizable voice. And he was one that he never really said a lot to me like specifically, but I always got the sense that he always believed in me. And he would take the time to show me certain things that, I might've been doing wrong, or I wasn't quite, I was close, but just wasn't quite there. And I wasn't a state qualifier, and we had plenty of those types of guys on our team, all through high school when I was on the team. So, for him to take the time to always show me different things or make me think about something a little bit differently, was always great. I think another coach that really spoke to me as well would be my cross country coach. He was he was a motivator. He understood how to get the most out of his athletes. And I think I was one of those. And he was rooting for me to run cross country when I was playing football. There's no doubt about it. Like when I'd run track, he would always be at the start finish line being one of the timers, volunteering, and he would always grab me at the end of one of my races, and talk to me about what was my goal. And he'd look at my time and he would walk through, my strategy of what I was trying to do for the race. And then when I finally ran cross country, there were times where I really struggled with it because, I thought I should be better than what I really was. And, he was always there to pick me up mentally. And that was huge for me because I had, sometimes that confidence, it was a struggle for me to have that confidence. And because sometimes I just didn't feel like I belonged. But he always made me feel like I belonged and I should be there. And here's why, and here's what I need to do next. But he knew how to get on me too. Like if and the rest of our team, if we weren't doing something that he thought or performing in a way that he thought we should be, he would get on us. I remember there was one meet that we ran and we did not perform well. It was a try meet, and we should have beaten both teams, and we lost to both teams. And we had a couple of our stud runners they just did not run good races. It was just a bad day. And so not only did we do we did a 5K warm up, we do our 5K run, we do our 5K cool down, and then we got about a half a dozen hill workouts afterwards at full speed after our cross country race. So I mean, it was, he wasn't very happy with us but he knew we had more in us. But so he was hard at times, but for the right reasons.
Very good. So we're going to switch gears now. Now you're 50 years older than from when you were a youth kid. I'm just kidding. You're younger than I am.
20.
So you started coaching your son in basketball, which you had played for a few years. However, you were asked to coach soccer a little bit after that, which you enjoyed, but you never really played as a player, or other than just watching it or just goofing around on the field. How did you prepare for your first season? How did you prepare for your first practice?
Oh man. So I remember when the AYSO director came up to me and said, "So you're going to coach this team next year, right?"
I got the same thing. Yeah.
And I said, "Nope." and so she just kept working on me every week. And I said, "Look, I enjoy watching soccer, because I'll watch any sport. I'll watch. I enjoy it. But I can't fathom in my idea of volunteering to coach, and having parents pay to have their kids play for somebody that has never played before, really fully understands the techniques of the game, or teaching the game." And she said, "Well, I mean, do you think I ever played? I never played, and I'm the director of AYSO." And I said, "Okay, fair enough." So I went ahead and volunteered, but I was always one of those that if I'm going to volunteer for something or do something like that, I'm going to jump with both feet in. And so I started doing my research online, and trying to learn as much as I could about, just best practices of other coaches, other people that have done it, whether they were really experienced coaches or, volunteer moms and dads just like myself that just wanted to step into a role and help out. So I did as much as I could there with trying to understand formations, basics of what I should be teaching kids at, at the U8 age level. And AYSO had some stuff that they, provided, which was definitely helpful. They give you a little book with, different practice ideas and things of that nature. And then they sent me over to a clinic that, some guy from, I can't remember if he was an English guy or a Scottish guy, and he ran through some drills with us and everything. So I took a lot of notes, trying to remember all of that stuff. But so that's, then I'd type out an outline, and I'd come to practice as prepared as I possibly could, only to realize that I was lucky to get through half of my outline with a bunch of 7-year-olds that, they were there, whether they were there to play soccer or not, I don't know, but it was fun. It was fun.
I should have like put in an envelope. I bet he had an outline. You are the most organized person I've ever met. Like when it comes, I
certainly
to
do.
Stuff.
And anybody that's coached with me knows I usually come with an outline.
I love it. So one of the things that I love about having you coach with me is, it's kind of funny, is how you challenge the refs, but in an extremely respectful way. So I feel this is important. Refs, I mean, are volunteer at best. They may get paid a little bit of money depending upon the level. ASO refs are all volunteer. I mean, my oldest son, he was a ref for us in ASO, and he got yelled at, almost walked off the field. So my question to you is, what do you consider pushing or almost going too far as a coach when it comes to um, t- interacting with the refs, and then what are you trying to accomplish when you do kind of get them going a little bit? What's your, I guess, does that make sense, that question?
Yes, I think so. I guess I'll prerequisite this question with, so, right after high school, I used to do a lot of slow pitch softball and basketball, in leagues and such. And, I became a pretty big hothead to the referees. And I think I learned my lesson, to calm down a little bit when I started realizing, obviously, that this isn't helping me whatsoever. Um, and then I decided to go ahead and put the stripes on. So I did referee for a couple of seasons, myself, for basketball in particular, um, and realized quickly how not easy it really is. It does seem like you're just sitting there watching, and how in the world can they blow a call like that? Well, when you're in the game and you got, in basketball in particular, you got 10 players running around. In soccer, you've got potentially up to 22 players
Mm-hmm.
running around the field. It is hard to see everything. There's no doubt about it. And even when you do see it, sometimes you hesitate and then you just let the play go. So I realized quickly that it's not as easy as I really would have thought. So I guess now track that back to your question. I try to keep a cool head, with the referees. And I do, sometimes I have a little bit of a strategy with, where I kind of make a comment to the referee. It might be just something of, hey, can you watch? Can you watch for this? This is happening with number 4, or whatever it might be. Typically, the only time I kind of lose myself a little bit, where I get a little bit louder, is if I see something where I think that my players may be, susceptible to getting hurt.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if I see somebody get rocked from behind and they don't get a call, that might be something where I might step onto the field a little bit and make myself a little bit more present. Um, but I think that's just more of my protective instinct and something like that. But I do want that call. Like, if we get knocked over from behind, and I feel like that is an unfair advantage, I'm going to stick up for my players, in terms of that play. But I will be the first one to correct players if I hear them start to bark at a referee themselves. I try to draw that line to say, let me as the coach handle that, because I don't need the players feeling that they need to be sticking up for themselves to the referee, because that's in a respectful way, that's not their place.
So what is your goal? Is your goal to get them to call that play, or is your goal to just make them aware? Is it both?
For the referee, you mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so really it's more of an awareness. Like, if I
Okay.
see something that I feel like should be called, typically I won't say much, because I want to, at the beginning of a game, because I want to see how the referees are going to call it. Every referee calls things a little bit differently because it's subjective. There are rules and some of it's objective, but a lot of it is a subjective feel for how much you're going to let them play. And I think, um, I do want to get the feel for how a referee wants to call the game, or does call the game in their own right. And, so as long as there's consistency with how they call it, typically I'm not going to say a whole lot. And so that, I think that's where I try to push that line of consistency. If you give the other team a certain type of call, I'm going to look for that certain type of call coming the other way too. And if I don't get it, that's usually when I'll make an awareness, comment about it to the referee myself. And I try to be as respectful as I can, because I don't want the referee to feel that I'm trying to call them out in a negative way, where we're not going to start getting calls.
So you're not just a coach, you're a parent as well. You have 3 kids. Coaching aside, um, What sports do they participate in?
All three of them play soccer, and all three of them play basketball. Other than that, Spencer, my oldest, he has played baseball. He does play football as well. He plays pretty much at any position that they need him to play, but he is the kicker as well. Shocking, being a kicker player. And does pretty well with that. And all of them run as well. They'll do 5Ks with me and my wife, and they do pretty well with that, which is pretty cool to see. I think though that's pretty much it. My youngest really wants to play softball, so at some point we're going to get her on the field and play some softball. I would think. She's 9, so she's ready to go. We were going to play last year, and we were all signed up and ready to go, but then COVID hit, and that kind of put a monkey wrench into that season. So
Annie tried it the year before, and
yeah,
she loved it, but she chose soccer over it.
yeah.
So, okay, I'm gonna get back to the rest of this question because you brought up running, and I did want to talk about this just real quick because your family runs together. I'm constantly seeing posts of you guys, training, but also like running all sorts of distance with not marathons, but like 4Ks, 5Ks, and stuff like that. What's the longest you have ran as a family?
As a family, 3.5 miles, so just over a 5K, as long as we've all run together.
Now, here's a question as the dad, and I know you're a competitor. Do you run with your family, or do you leave them and just go?
Honestly, so when we're doing a run with our girls as young as they are, we usually me and my wife will grab one of the girls and we'll run with them and we'll stay with them. Spencer, he's old enough now where he takes off. I can't keep up with him anymore. I'd have to train to keep up with him.
And he is built like a runner, and he is a runner.
Yeah.
All right, I just wanted to see. I was really curious to see if you.
But the competitive nature does come out in me, though. I mean, I look at the field and say, okay, how many kids are about their age, and because they're pretty good runners. So if I push them a little bit, I'm not drill sergeant dad running with them, but I'll push them on that final mile to see how much they can go with it.
So what about your wife? Who would win in a 5K? You or your wife? Be good here. I know her. I'm waiting for Denise to come out of that background and just smack you.
We did just sign up for our first marathon actually today.
Oh wow!
So we're gonna be doing a marathon here coming up in June for the first time. So the longest I've ever ran was 13.1, and when I finished that run, I thought to myself, I don't know how people could do this ×2 back to back, but we're gonna find out.
I can drive 27 miles. It's pretty good.
That's right.
So with all of these athletes in your house, and let's keep coaching aside for a minute. How do you juggle all of them? The biggest part of it is how do you handle when you have, and I've seen this happen with you have one playing in one city and another playing in another city, and you can't be in both spots.
Yeah, it's weighing the choice of where I need to be and where I want to be, I guess, at times. But it's usually because I'm involved as much as I am with coaching and helping out on the teams. So a lot of times it's like, okay, what is my priority? But thank goodness we have team parents that are all great, because they're, if we have to, call somebody to help us with our third, whoever that third one ends up being, we try to rotate the best that we can. The team parents will usually step in and help us with rides and things of that nature. But it does get difficult. When I was coaching all three kids in basketball, like head coaching as well. And unfortunately, my youngest was playing up with my older daughter. So she was a second grader playing fourth grade basketball on the competitive team. She was able to handle herself, so that was good. So that made it a little bit easier. But there were weeks where we were literally 7 days a week with basketball, with practices and tournaments and all that, and this winter I miss that because we don't have any of that going on right now. But.
I've been enjoying the 4 days this past couple weeks. It's been nice. It's been great with having her out there and doing it 4 days a week. When we're used to 5 or 6, right? 4 is at least something. A coach's hat back on, but you're also a parent. Are you harder on your kids than you are the rest of the team?
I learned a lot with my oldest. I think with my oldest, I certainly was. And, I think it was one of those learning curve moments where I really had to kind of sit back. And there was a couple times where I got on him pretty hard, about mental challenges that he was having with being a teammate and things. And so there were times where I had to step back and realize that I wasn't right with how I reacted as well. And I'm not going to lie, there was a couple times where I'd walk into his room and at night after getting on him about something, and I apologized to him because I think that I treated him unfairly. And, it was a good lesson learned with, hey, just because I'm your dad and an adult and a coach, I'm also susceptible to mistakes and learning as well. And I think I've learned a lot from him, as much as he hopefully has learned from me in those regards. So as he's gotten older, he's gotten, some other coaches like Coach Adam, who's worked with him, and Coach Dan, and I try to force myself to step back, and let them coach. The guy that coaches with me in basketball, for him, we have this agreement that we coach each other's kids because his kid's on the team, and I think he would say the same thing, that he can sometimes be a little bit harder on his kid, than anybody else as well. So we kind of made that mutual agreement that we would, get on each other's kids.
I think you and I inadvertently did that with not even
we did.
talking about it. Yeah,
it was, and I don't think we've really talked about it. But we do. And I try to step back, and I think that's the lesson learned that I've had with my oldest, is I try not to say too much to my own kid, and I let you do that. You say the things that I would say, but you say
exactly.
Probably a little bit more, with a little bit more patience, I guess, maybe.
Well, I think the stigma is there, right? This is, you can feel like you're disappointing your coach, but I mean, when you're disappointing your father, there's more attachment to it. And I think to be able to, unattach yourself to that probably helps as well. So
absolutely.
So let's flip the switch a little bit. Spencer's amazing at soccer that I've seen, and I've been watching basketball. Zoe really came into her own the last couple of years, and Ava is going to be a star. How do you balance being a coach and praising your kids?
That's a good question, because I have thought about that several times. I guess part of my lesson learned with my oldest is, it's unfair to treat him harder, I guess, as a parent, just because I know who he is and he's my kid. But I think it's you can flip that too and say you don't want to overpraise them either as your kid, even though inside, when your kid scores a game-winning goal or a tournament-winning goal or something, you want to just go out there and just start throwing them up in the air if they're small enough, but I try, I think from a coaching perspective, I try to be as neutral as possible in front of everybody, but maybe at home, while we're by ourselves, we kind of take that moment to be, father kid, and just talk about it and just tell them, how proud you are of them. And whether you win or lose, there's other great moments, that you see growth and you see your kid play, just an amazing game, that you knew that was in them, and they, you just see them go up to that next level. I look at Zoe, and Zoe reminds me a lot of me. Not the fastest kid,
She works hard.
not the most athletic kid, but a student, and very, very smart. And we talk about that all the time. It's like, Zoe, you may not be the fastest kid, you may not be the one that's putting the ball in the back of the net, like your teammates, but you can contribute to the team. You can play a role, as part of a successful team. And she's got Coach Dan Bully this season, and I have just seen her just rise, and really grow in a sport that she really loves. And there was a while I wasn't sure she was going to continue playing. And I was okay with that. I told her it's your choice. Don't be out here because you think I want you to be out here. Be out here because you want to be out here. If you don't want to play soccer, we can find something else for you to do, whether it's sports related or something else. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's, being part of a play, and finding yourself and expressing yourself in that way, and that's okay. But she is just really, she's really starting to come into her own, and she's got great teammates. And I'm just so proud of her.
I really like what you just said, and I appreciate it, about not. I mean, you are a big sports family. I mean, your whole family sports. People who see me on the sidelines would probably think, "Oh my gosh, he's one of those dads that forces their kid to do stuff," and I don't. I mean, Annalie and I have a discussion, before tryouts every year. You don't have to do this. Would you want to try something else? She has tried basketball, softball. We usually take the winter off for snowboarding, and we this year, because of how things fell, we didn't really have that option. We had already paid for it. But, so I think that's important to see, someone who is a coach, a player, and everything like that really say, what, as a parent, we can't make our kids do that. We have to, we have to let them have choices. Are they
Right.
having fun? That should be the number one choice. And as soon as they're not having fun, it should be all over. Speaking of being that parent, so this last weekend, we're doing indoor and I'm not coaching, and I had my first taste of sitting in the bleachers, watching my kid and my team. Right? I mean, I've had this team. Some of these girls have been under me for 3 years,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting with the parents, and our parents are phenomenal. We couldn't have asked for better parents. But I was reminded by one of them to not be coaching. And so and she had every right to do so. I actually yelled something that I'm pretty sure you yelled at the other side, but they need to be listening to you. My question to you is, okay, I handled it poorly. I stopped at that point. I did really well, and the rest of the game I just cheered. But how do you handle it when you're on the sideline, when you're not with the team and you're on the bleacher side of it, whether it's basketball, soccer, baseball? How do you handle yourself when you see things that could be done a little differently?
Growing moments. I guess I've grown in this area, because I was very much that parent. I was very much, before I started coaching, I was very much that parent, on the sideline, acting like I knew what I was talking about and trying to tell my kid to do certain things. But I think as I coached now for several years, I've come to realize, I usually do pretty good with it. I usually try to just encourage versus give direction. If I'm seeing something, developing or happening, I might, throw, go after it or go get it or something of that nature, but, or a good job, or a nice try or something of that nature. But I try to keep it to those little comments and a little clapping and all that. And what I've started doing over the last year or so is really maybe focus on other kids, and just encourage, and make positive comments to the other kids on the team, not just my kid. Just because I'm starting to get to know those kids as well. Just watching them start to play together over the course of the last couple of years. So if I focus on that, typically I stop focusing on what my kid should be doing in my perception, and that's when I start getting in trouble if I start focusing on that. And so I try to stop myself from that focus, because I try to respect what the coaches are doing, and what their strategy is, and know that they've got it.
Oh, and yeah, I think it was very warranted, me being silenced at that point. It was definitely, it was something that I wasn't used to. Being on that side, I've only ever coached my kids. So it's new. It's fun though. I love our families are so much fun to be around. And there's a couple that we're all saying, get her together now. So all right. We're coming to the last few minutes. The last section is our speed round. I have 5 questions for you, real quick answers. They don't have to be long explanations. You don't have to think too hard on them. They're not going to be extremely intellectual, but hopefully it'll be fun for you.
Okay.
First, are you ready?
All right, let's go.
All right, first question. Favorite song to play to get hyped up before a game or running?
In high school, that would be Anything with the Offspring.
Okay.
That was my band right before right before I'd go out to run. I would have that Smash album playing, and I'd be rocking to that.
Do you have anything now that you play for your kids, or did they request anything?
They like Linkin Park, actually. Yeah, which is cool. I'm okay with that.
Annie has a screamo song that she listens to that's a cover of Royals, and that's what she listens to before, but she loves her Linkin Park too. So
yeah. I'm not sure what Spencer listens to now, but for the last couple of years, it's been Linkin Park.
What sport do you coach that you wish you were better at as a player?
As a player, I would say soccer. I think soccer is it's a game that I've really grown to appreciate more than I ever thought I would. Now I always watched soccer growing up. I'd watch the World Cup anytime the World Cup was on, anytime the U.S. national team was on. I'd watch it. I didn't get into the Premier League and all of that until just the last couple of years, really. But I always appreciated the game of soccer, and wish that I had had more of an opportunity to play. My school didn't offer soccer as a sport in high school, or I could have seen myself really going to that, even maybe before cross country.
Worst colors to have on a uniform?
Scarlet and gray.
What's scarlet? Red and gray?
Yeah, Ohio State.
Oh, I should have gone there. I thought it was going
to.
I was trying to push you to say green and white, but
no, that's just above that.
What would be worse? Losing your voice before coaching a big game, or getting a cold before date night with your wife?
Losing my voice before a big game.
That would be worse.
It would be worse. Sorry, Denise. I'm sorry. But she knows me very well, and I think that she would not be surprised by that answer.
I have no doubt in my mind. Favorite post-win celebration treat? And it doesn't have to be sweet. It could be a dinner.
Oh, man. The last couple of years, we've ended the season by going to Clavon's and having dinner at Clavon's, which is a local pizza place here that started in Jackson. They got Chicago style stuffed crust pizzas that are just amazing. So, and they got great atmosphere. So it's just a good spot, to have a cold brew and a pizza with the kids and just celebrate the season.
This is not a paid advertisement for Cleo.
No,
We're done. We're a little bit over, but that's totally fine. I wanted to get all these questions. I don't want to rush this one for you, though. I think it's important for you as a parent coach to answer. What, and this is your last question, I promise.
Okay.
What was your favorite moment as a coach so far up until now?
There's two, and they're related. So, part of my coaching philosophy has always been, and it really has been solidified working with Coach Dan and Coach Adam and yourself and with DBSS. Winning is a goal. It is not everything, and it is not the only thing. And especially at younger ages, it's great to have that star athlete and go out and use that star athlete and help you win some games, maybe win a few tournaments. But when you can take a group of kids and you focus on the right things, the development of everybody from A to Z, whether they're your star player or whether they're the player that just hasn't found themselves yet, a lot like I was when I was a freshman in high school. And you can take a team like that and you develop them and you work with them and you watch them just get creamed, game after game after game. So our girls, for example, last year, most of them were U9s playing U10, and we got creamed several games. And to watch them this year go through all of that, but still work and come back practice after practice, game after game, and listen and do everything they could possibly do from a physical standpoint, and then continue to develop, and then watch them win a tournament in November to kind of end our fall campaign. But win that tournament the right way, where everybody was playing, everybody was contributing, everybody had a role, and everybody had to step up. And to watch them pull off a game kind of in that championship game in the last minute, that was something special. And my oldest, Spencer, in basketball team, we took a basketball team, me and a friend of mine, and they had, they've won a couple of games, but, they struggled. We focused, there was a lot of time before I got involved that was focused on, X's and O's. We need to run these plays. And, I took over, and we really focused on more fundamentals, dribbling, basics, understanding how to control the ball, and contribute that way. And we ended up winning a tournament last year. It was the first time we were even able to run with, a championship team, and we did. And we ended up winning it. And that was a great moment for those boys as well.
It's wonderful. Like you said, so many teams are built from, let's take the best athletes and let's roll with it. But, they never learn how to lose, and they don't learn how to pick themselves up. They don't. And I agree with you 100%. And those are great examples. Anything that you want to say before we take off here?
No, man, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity for this. And I think you just kind of hit it on the head at the end there. And just a last point is, losing is okay. And I think sometimes we as parents, we want our kids so bad to feel that taste of a win. And then we realize, we forget that they're 9, and it's more important sometimes to the parent than it is to the kid. And I think, it's okay for them to struggle and challenge themselves to get up to that feeling of what it takes to feel that win and that championship, because they earned it. And, sometimes you can work really hard and you put yourself in a position where you have the opportunity, but and that's really all you can ask for. And if you give yourself the opportunity enough, there's going to be a time when you come up over the top, always. And I think, you can't be afraid to lose, and you got to put your work in and roll your sleeves up to get there.
Excellent ending. Coach Al, I appreciate your time. I'm so glad we got to have you on. It was fun. I see you a ton, and I missed you when we were away from each other, and I'm excited that we get to spend the next few months together. And thank you so much for joining us. And for all of you next week, we'll have a new coach next week that we get to chat with, and please keep listening to A Coach's Handbook. Thanks, everybody.
This the best time. Why you wanna be an outcast?
All right, bonus question. Your favorite thing about coaching with me? Oh man, you had to think about it.
There's so many things, Matt. No, you know what? You know what you bring to the table, Matt, that I really appreciate is you bring culture to our little family of a team. It's really tough. One of the things that is a challenge for our team in particular, and we've got a couple other teams that we experience the same challenge, but I think that our team that we work together on wins is bridging two communities. So we have a few kids that play from the Jackson area, and we have a few kids that play from the Kalamazoo area. And to bridge, a culture with the families is sometimes a really tough thing to do. Now it takes commitment from the families as well, but I think you're kind of that glue that kind of gives the parents an opportunity to come together and feel like we can come together, and everyone really knows each other because of that commonality. So I think that's one of the things that I really enjoy about our team that we have together, and what you bring to that team, because you have no problem going up to anybody, whether you don't know them or you barely know them or you know someone that knows them. 7 ways of Kevin Bacon or whatever. I
have my 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
There you go, 7 degrees. There it is. Yeah. So I think that's probably one of the things that I really appreciate most about you, and I think that's what really draws our families together. And it's the girls all come together really well, and they're all friends. But the parents are all friends and all get along very well, and I think that really helps.
Well, you made that really embarrassing. I thought it was going to be a fun joke.
I turned that serious.
You did, and I appreciate all of your. There's so many things that I could say I appreciate about you. Hopefully, it comes out in this episode.